Once upon a time, there lived a woman named Adia and her husband, Kwaku. They had been married for many years, and their love was as strong as the roots of an ancient baobab tree. Kwaku adored Adia. He praised her kindness, her laughter, the way she could make the bitterest herbs taste sweet in a meal. And no matter what, he never let a single day pass without reminding her, "You are my greatest blessing." But there was one thing missing, a child. Adia longed for a baby more than anything in the world. She dreamed of little feet running across their hut, of a tiny voice calling her, "Mama." She watched other women in the village cradle their newborns, and though she smiled, her heart ached. The villagers noticed, and they whispered, "A woman without a child is like a tree without fruit. Perhaps she has angered the spirits. Maybe Kwaku should take another wife." Adia heard every word, even when they spoke in hushed voices. But Kwaku always held her close, whispering, "A child does not define our love." Yet, at night, when Kwaku was asleep, Adia would press a hand to her empty stomach and fight back tears. One evening, after yet another day of feeling the weight of the villagers' stares, Adia went to visit old Mama Osai, the oldest woman in the village, the one who knew secrets hidden even from the wind. Adia knelt before her and poured out her heart. "Mama Osai, tell me, will I ever hold a child of my own?" The old woman's cloudy eyes studied her carefully. Then, after a long silence, she spoke. "A woman who longs too deeply may invite something unnatural." Adia shivered. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mama Osai leaned in, her voice like dried leaves rustling in the wind. "There are things beyond what we see, child. There are spirits that hear wishes too desperate, and not all of them are kind." For a moment, the old woman said nothing more. Then, with a sigh, she touched Adia's hand. "Some prayers should not be answered." Adia left feeling uneasy, but she shook off the old woman's warning. She had done nothing wrong. She only wanted to be a mother, but fate had other plans. And then, on the night of the red moon, something strange happened, something impossible, something that would make the entire village turn against her. One cruel season, when the air was dry and the rivers shrank to thin streams, Kwaku fell ill. At first, it was just a small cough, nothing to fear. Adia made him warm soup, rubbed his back, and teased him. Even the strongest man in the village can catch a little cold. But the cough did not stop. It grew harsher, deeper, shaking his body like a tree caught in a storm. His strong hands, once able to carry bundles of firewood with ease, now trembled when he tried to lift a calabash of water. Adia watched in fear as her husband, the man who had always stood tall and proud, began to wither. She did everything she could. She crushed herbs from the healer's basket and fed them to him, but he only grew weaker. She prayed to the spirits, whispered to the wind, begged the ancestors to take away his sickness, but no help came. The villagers soon gathered outside their hut, shaking their heads. "This sickness is not ordinary," some murmured. "Perhaps he angered the spirits," others whispered. And then, one evening, Kwaku could no longer rise from his sleeping mat. His breathing was slow, labored. His once bright eyes were dim. Adia knelt beside him, holding his hand tightly, as if her grip alone could keep him in this world. Tears slid down her face. She was not ready. Kwaku smiled weakly and brushed a tear from her cheek with his trembling fingers. "Do not cry, my love," he whispered. "Even death will not keep me from you." And with those final words, his hand went limp in hers. Adia's wail tore through the village like a wounded animal. Women covered their mouths. Men lowered their heads. The village had lost a good man. But in the far corner, watching from the shadows, old Mama Osai muttered under her breath, her old, cloudy eyes fixed on Adia. A love like theirs does not rest easily. No one paid attention to the old woman's words, but soon, they would realize she had spoken the truth, because Kwaku's love was not finished, because death had not taken him away completely, because something strange was about to happen. The villagers spoke in hushed voices about the red moon, a rare night when the sky bleeds, and the veil between the living and the dead becomes thin. On such nights, the elders warned, spirits roam freely. Some come with blessings, others, with unfinished business. Adia barely listened. Since Kwaku's passing, her world had become quiet, empty. Nothing mattered anymore. That night, as the village prepared for the red moon, Adia lay on her mat, staring at the ceiling. Sleep came slowly, like a shadow creeping over her, and then, she was no longer alone. In her dream, she saw Kwaku. He stood at the edge of the forest, his broad shoulders draped in moonlight. His face was just as she remembered, strong, kind, familiar. Her heart leaped. Kwaku! She cried, running toward him. But as she got closer, something felt wrong. His smile was off. His eyes were hollow. He lifted his hand toward her, but it was too long, the fingers stretched, thin like bones. A cold wind rushed through the trees, whispering in a language she did not understand. Then, a breath, cold, damp, against her cheek. She gasped. Kwaku's lips moved, but the voice that came out was not his. Adia! The voice was deep, distorted, not quite human. Her chest tightened. Fear coiled around her like a snake. Suddenly, her eyes flew open. She was awake. Her heart pounded in her chest. The room was dark, but something felt different. The air was heavy, cold, and then, she felt it. A weight in the room. A presence. She was not alone. Weeks passed, and the nights of sorrow slowly turned into something else. A strange feeling growing inside Adia. At first, she thought it was grief playing tricks on her body. But then, she felt it. A flutter. A movement. A life. Adia gasped, placing her hands over her belly. Her heart pounded as realization hit her. She was with child. Tears ran down her face. Could it be? Kwaku's final gift. Even death will not keep me from you. His last words echoed in her mind, and for the first time since his passing, she felt hope. She could not keep this joy to herself. She had to tell the village. The next morning, she rushed to the village square, breathless with excitement. I am carrying Kwaku's child, she announced, her voice trembling with happiness. Silence fell. Then, laughter. Not the warm, joyous kind. Cold, mocking, cruel. The women clutched their chests, gasping as if she had spoken madness. She lies, one of them spat. No woman can carry a dead man's child, another sneered. The men whispered among themselves, their faces twisting in suspicion. She has taken another man in secret. She has shamed Kwaku's name. Adia shook her head violently. No, this is a miracle. Kwaku is the father. But the village did not see a miracle. They saw a curse. The elders gathered, their wrinkled faces grim as they studied her with cold, unblinking eyes. Then, old Mama Osai, the eldest of them all, stepped forward and raised her staff. A child born of the dead? She murmured, shaking her head. No. This child is unnatural. She has invited a spirit into her womb. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The whispers grew into shouts. She carries a demon. She must confess her sins. This child will bring ruin upon us all. Terror seized Adia's heart. She had expected joy, love, acceptance. Instead, she saw rage, disgust, fear, and then, they stepped toward her, hands reaching, eyes burning. Adia staggered back, her breath coming in short gasps. She had never felt more alone. Fire, was this truly a miracle? Or had she welcomed something she did not understand? Fire. At first, the villagers continued to mock Adia, spitting at her feet whenever she passed. Shameless woman, the elders hissed. She carries a curse in her belly. The women sneered. Even the children, once innocent, now pointed at her with fearful eyes, whispering about the demon child. But then, the first sign came. One morning, Mama Jara, the village egg seller, rushed into the square, her face pale with terror. The chickens, she cried. They laid eggs as black as night. The villagers gathered around as she cracked one open. Thick, red blood oozed out. Gasps filled the air. This is her doing, a man shouted, pointing at Adia. Ever since she became pregnant, evil has come upon us. Adia clutched her belly, her heart pounding. But the darkness was just beginning. That very night, a cry of agony tore through the village. It was Nia, the loudest of the women who had insulted Adia. She had been 5 months pregnant. Now, she lay wailing in the dirt, blood pooling beneath her. She had lost her child, and she was not the only one. By the next moon, 3 more women who had cursed Adia suffered the same fate. Fear spread like wildfire. The villagers avoided her, turning away whenever she passed. But the land itself had already changed. Whenever Adia walked toward the river, the once clear waters turned to mud and dust. The river rejects her, the people murmured. The gods are angry. Children who once played freely in the village square now ran in terror whenever she appeared. They screamed, sobbed, clung to their mothers as if Adia were a monster. But the worst came on the night of the thunderstorm. It was Jingo, the blacksmith's son, the boy who had thrown a stone at Adia the day she announced her pregnancy. That night, his mother found him standing outside Adia's hut. His body was stiff as wood. His arms hung at his sides, unmoving. His lips were parted, but no sound came. His eyes, wide, unblinking, were filled with terror. He never spoke again. The villagers, once cruel, now trembled at the sight of Adia. They no longer mocked her. They feared her, and in the dead of night, the elders gathered in whispers. "This is no ordinary child. We must end this, before it is too late." Fire, but was it already too late? Fire. The villagers had made their decision. Adia had to be removed, one way or another. At dawn, the village square filled with people. Women clutched their children, men gripped their walking sticks, and the elders sat in a circle, their faces like stone. Then, the village chief stepped forward. His voice was cold, final. "She is cursed. This child is a demon. She must be driven away." A shiver passed through the crowd, but no one spoke against him. Instead, they acted. Rough hands grabbed Adia. She kicked, she screamed, she begged. "Please, I have done nothing wrong." But they did not listen. They dragged her through the dirt, pulling her toward the village square. Dust stung her eyes, her heartbeat pounded in her ears. They tied her to a post, ropes digging into her wrists. The villagers surrounded her, their eyes burning with fear and hatred. One woman spit at her feet. A man picked up a stone. Others followed. Then came the voices. "Kill her!" someone shouted. "No, leave her in the deep forest," another argued. "Let the beasts deal with her." A third voice hissed, "Cut the child from her belly. And this before the demon is born." Adia's blood ran cold. She struggled against the ropes, her breath coming in short gasps. This was it. She was going to die. And then, the sky darkened. A shadow, vast and endless, spread across the village. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing down on their chests. A chilling wind rushed through the square, carrying with it a deep, unearthly hum. Then, the ground trembled, hard. Villagers screamed as huts shook, baskets toppled, and the earth split in jagged lines beneath their feet. A thick fog rolled in, swallowing the village whole. The air turned icy. The wind howled, not like the wind, but like voices, thousands of voices, crying, screaming, whispering, and then a voice, low, deep, unforgiving. It did not come from one direction, it came from everywhere. "Touch my wife, and you will all suffer." The villagers collapsed to their knees, some covered their ears, some sobbed. Even the chief, once strong and proud, trembled like a leaf. The wind whipped around Adia, but she felt no pain, no fear, only warmth. Kwaku, he had returned, and he was angry. From that night forward, no one dared to lay a hand on Adia. The villagers no longer spoke her name aloud. They no longer spat insults or threw stones in her path. Instead, they watched her from a distance, their faces tight with fear and curiosity. They whispered behind closed doors. "She still carries the child," some said in hushed voices. "Is it truly Kwaku's? Or something else?" But no one confronted her. No one stopped her as she walked through the village, her belly growing rounder with each passing moon. And yet, the fear did not fade. Strange things continued to happen. At night, some claimed to hear voices drifting from Adia's hut, soft whispers, too low to understand, but too chilling to ignore. Others swore they saw a tall shadow standing near her door, unmoving, as if keeping watch. Even the bravest hunters refused to pass her hut after sunset. Then, one fateful night, the storm came. Thunder roared in the sky. Lightning split the heavens. The wind screamed like 1,000 voices wailing at once. And inside the small hut, Adia's cries of labor mixed with the storm. She was giving birth. Sweat drenched her body. She clutched the mat beneath her breath ragged, her strength fading. Outside, trees bent, the earth trembled, and the villagers huddled in their homes, terrified. Then, just as the storm reached its peak, a baby's cry pierced the night, and as if the heavens had been waiting for that sound, the storm stopped. The wind fell silent. The rain ceased. The sky, once raging with fury, was now eerily calm. Adia gasped. Her trembling hands reached for her child, her heart hammering in her chest. When she saw his face, her breath caught in her throat. The baby had Kwaku's eyes. Not just the shape, not just the color, they were Kwaku's eyes, full of love, full of life, full of something beyond this world. Tears streamed down Adia's cheeks as she held her son close. Kwaku had kept his promise. Even in death, he had found a way back to her. The next morning, the villagers gathered at a distance. They did not come to celebrate. They did not come to welcome the child. They came to see. They stood in silence, their eyes filled with a mix of awe and fear. Some whispered she was blessed. She bore the child of true love. Others shook their heads, whispering, no, that child is not fully human. No one knew what to believe, but Adia no longer cared. She had survived. She had her son, and she would never fear these people again. She cradled her baby in her arms, kissed his forehead, and whispered softly, Kwaku, you kept your promise. At the edge of the crowd, old Mama Osai stood watching, her wise eyes unreadable. She studied the child long and hard. Then, with a deep sigh, she murmured to herself, this is only the beginning. Years passed. The child grew, and though no one knew the truth of what he was, they all knew one thing. He was not ordinary. Some said he grew into a great healer, possessing knowledge beyond his years, curing ailments no one else could. Others whispered of his anger, that whenever he was upset, the winds would rise, the earth would tremble, that storms answered his call. And so, the legend spread. No one ever questioned the power of love again. And under every red moon, when the sky burned crimson and the night felt alive with unseen spirits, mothers whispered to their daughters, be careful what you wish for. Love never truly dies. If you liked the video, then please like and subscribe the channel for more interesting videos.